In this video, we're going to take a look at a bunch of different inverse kinematics solutions, or IK solutions, in Unity and see which ones make the most sense for which use cases. I'm personally most interested in the use cases where we have an animated 3D model and we want to apply some inverse kinematics to adjust how the animation plays out. We're going to take a look at Easy IK, Fast IK, Inverse Kinematics, Kineractive, Interactor, Final IK, the animation rigging package, and even rolling your own IK elbow and hand placements. That's all the way from free and a lot of work to $90 and hopefully almost no work. Hey, Chris here from LlamAcademy, here to help you.
Who, me?
Yes, you! Make your game dev dreams become reality by helping you pick the right IK solution for your game. Just a quick refresher in case you don't really know what inverse kinematics actually is. It's the process of picking some arbitrary point, and then for humanoid models, finding backwards how do we position the hand and the elbow to get to that point. It also works for things like spider legs and robot arms, that kind of stuff. And it takes into consideration the constraints that we'll put on these joints. For example, my elbow can't bend more than 90, 135 degrees maybe. So that's taken into consideration. There's no magic in what we're going to see today. All of these packages are either implementing the Jacobian equations, cyclic coordinate descent, or CCD, and or forward and backward reaching inverse kinematics, or fabric. To me, they're kind of magic, but if you know math and stuff, you can implement this yourself as well. If you don't want to have to learn that wizardry, then the solutions we're looking at today should help you save some time and hopefully also your sanity. We're going to be looking at a lot of different inverse kinematic solutions, and not all of them are equal. Some of them work only when the model is not already animated, meaning they will work best if you want to procedurally animate that model. If you want to have an already animated model, such as a humanoid character, and place their arms and their hands onto a gun, these won't work with that. At least not out of the box, and you might have to do a lot of work to get them there. A lot of demos show it working with the humanoid, but to actually animate it, you need to implement fully procedural animations, which is a lot larger of an effort. I find that these ones that don't work on animated models are best if you have things like a robot arm or something you do want to procedurally animate, like a spider. That's going to be the first batch that we take a look at. The first one we'll talk about is called Easy IK. This is free, open source, available on GitHub, and it works really well when we don't need an animated model. And the little demo that they show on their GitHub, they showed positioning different knees, feet, all that kind of stuff to get a human that can move around. But it's important to know that this doesn't work on animated models. You have to fully animate the model with IK if you want to use this tool. I set up some models with this IK chain, and Easy IK was really easy to get set up working on it, and we get some pretty interesting results. This one has very different results from what we'll see in some other systems. However, if we attach this to a human holding a gun, I got more unrealistic results on how it posed the humanoid character. And what I mean by that is on every system that we're going to look at today, I'm using the exact same transform positions and rotations for hands and elbow placement. But you'll see some of these systems do weird things like this, where the hands are basically broken, and some will also have really unnatural looking shoulder placement. You can fix these hand and shoulder problems, it just doesn't work the same way as all the other systems do. In terms of performance, it's really fast. No issues there, no garbage generated. I think this worked pretty well. The documentation, there's not really a lot going on here. If you're not already familiar with how inverse kinematics works and some of the lingo that people use, it might be a little bit confusing. The editor tooling is fine. It shows you what you need to see. And I think that's really all there is to say here. It worked fine for non-humanoid characters, humanoid characters, kind of but fast, easy, free. The second one we'll look at is called Inverse Kinematics. It's for free on the Unity Asset Store. Hasn't been published in a really long time, since 2017 even. It, like Easy IK, doesn't work with animated models. The documentation here is, I would say, even worse than what Easy IK has. And the workflow is very similar to what we see with Easy IK or doing it yourself. You position some transforms and it solves towards the target. It does not work on this big IK chain thing that I made. It only works with humanoid IK. This one to me doesn't really make sense to use because you basically can just do the exact same thing on Animator IK, which we'll talk about later. And you don't need this thing that honestly I didn't feel like did very well. And then you get the benefit of it working on animated models. Personally, I'd pass on this one and use some of the other ones that we're going to talk about throughout this video. The next one we'll look at is called Fast IK. This is also available for free on the Asset Store and on GitHub. This one works similarly to Easy IK. where we can set up IK on any arbitrary object chain that we want. It also works on humanoid models, but much like the last two we looked at, it does not work on animated models. The result of putting my hands onto a gun, again on the humanoid, didn't look quite natural. That was a similar problem that we saw in EasyIK. It's got an okay editor, shows you the bones, basically how it's going to work, and has a couple little tools to help you visualize what's going to happen. The documentation was relatively sparse, but this one worked pretty well out of the box. You didn't need a lot of help getting it started. This one does work backwards from how pretty much every other IK system works, where you pick the tip and tell it how many parents to go up, instead of you putting it on the parent and tell it how many child nodes to go down. That was a little bit weird and kind of is annoying to do because you have to expand. If you have, like in this case, I had 10 objects nested in, I have to go all the way down and put it on the tip object and tell it, hey, go up 10 nodes. Something interesting is you can see there's a pretty big difference in how EasyIK and FastIK solve to get to the point. Even though EasyIK and FastIK are both using Fabric, they end up with pretty different results. This is also fast, as the name suggests, and doesn't generate garbage either. So both of this and EasyIK are pretty much on the same level of goodness. So the biggest problem so far is none of these work with animated models. Like I said earlier, I'm more interested in seeing how can we set up IK on an animated model. So the next batch that we're going to look at all do support already animated models. The first one we're going to look at is also free. It's called the Roll Your Own script, implementing on Animator IK. We did this in the gun series so far in the player IK script, and this works actually pretty well. And there's very little code involved. You can even take the player IK script, which I'm gonna have a link directly to that script in the description. You can just take that script, slap it on your player controller, and position the transforms. Positioning those transforms is a little bit annoying without some editor tooling, because like you've seen with some of these other tools so far, they show you where the bones are, where the transforms are, to make it a little bit easier to position everything. My hope in this video was to find something to make it easier to do all this stuff so we didn't have to do all that ourselves. But this is an option that is free and honestly not very much work. You can even take the player IK script I've already provided. All that we're doing is placing transforms with a position and a rotation for where we want the hands and the elbows to show up. And you can do the same for feet and legs. The downside to this is it doesn't work at all as a generic IK solver. It only works with animated models, specifically humanoid animated models. We can even go further to set body look rotation, head look rotation using this solution as well. But there's really a nicer, easier way that we'll talk about later to handle that. So if you need relatively simple, straightforward IK, I think this is a great option for you. It's free, fast, and low code. The next one we're going to look at is called Kineractive. This one used to be a paid asset. It was like $30, but in 2022, it went free, which I think is both good and bad. Good because more people can use it. Bad because most likely we're not going to get any new updates on the system. This one, like Rolling Your Own, does not support generic IK solving. This is for humanoid characters, and as the name suggests, it's more of an interaction system than strictly an IK solution. It's got 149 pages of documentation, which is really awesome. I love to see in-depth detailed documentation so we don't have to reach out for support from whoever made that asset. This system is really designed for us to target hands and interacting with things, which I think for the use case that I'm looking at again is putting hands on guns, picking up ammo, interacting with doors, all that kind of stuff. This system is really great for that because you can place hands on a gun and then in the same system, have it come off the gun to go pick up a gun off the ground, go push a door, that kind of stuff. And I thought this was really awesome. The editor experience here is also really nice. It does take a little bit of time to get it set up, but once you get it set up, it's pretty straightforward to work with. The documentation is really clear on how do you do different things. But when I was implementing some examples of, oh, let me go pick up this gun, I ran into some weird problems and limitations that I wouldn't have expected from a system like this. It was challenging to change targets at runtime because pretty much everything is marked as private, which generally you would want to do. And I feel a little bit weird complaining that somebody made variables private on scripts, or at least provide a way to set them. And for a simple use case like I wanted to spawn in my gun and I don't have the IK targets built into the scene, that wasn't supported and I had to make some code changes. That may just be an expectation gap on my side, but it did feel like a weirdly simple use case that wasn't supported. If you're looking for a robust system for humanoid IK interaction, this is a decent choice. It may require some tweaking to get it integrated, but other than that, it works pretty well. The next one we're going to talk about is called Interactor. And I've seen this one a bunch of different times on Reddit and was pretty impressed by it. So I actually reached out to the publisher and asked if I could have a copy of this because this is a paid asset at $62. and they did give that to me for free. So I did not buy this one. This was given to me at my request for the purpose of including it in this comparison. Regardless if I got it for free or not, I was going to include it here because I think it looks awesome. But I really appreciate getting it gifted because making these videos sometimes gets really expensive. Currently, this is still in beta. It's not a 1.0 release yet, and it's a really complex solution. Similar to Kineractive, this is an interaction system, not strictly an IK solution. So again, it's targeting humanoid characters. It doesn't have arbitrary IK solvers. It's designed to allow you to handle all forms of interaction within your game. With a complex solution, it does take some time to understand how does it work, how should you use it. Really reviewing the demo helps out a lot. There's a lot of stuff that you can do, and you need to take a little bit of time to understand how do you achieve all these different results. One thing that Interactor does that no other solution does very well is allows you to have finger IK as well. So we can position our fingers in different positions to get a really polished look of holding that gun, even if you don't have an animation for it. You can get really good fine-grained hand placement and finger placement using Interactor. I think it's really awesome to use Interactor for this purpose of placing hands on guns, because then we can interact with the gun and the world all with the same system, all behaving the same way, and get really fluid dynamic transitions from one to the other. This, of course, does support animated models, and there is support for non-animated models as well. But again, this is targeting humanoid characters, not generic IK stuff. With the finger IK, I think Interactor gave me the best looking hands-on gun solution out of all of these, but there is some, let's say, downsides to Interactor. I found that using Interactor was a little bit more cumbersome than using Kineractive to get the stuff to do what I wanted it to do. The interaction of picking up a rocket launcher, so my hands are on the gun, and then I come near the rocket launcher and I want my arm to reach out, grab the rocket launcher, and then bring it back up and put it on my shoulder. That was like the second or third different interaction that I set up in Interactor, so I thought I kind of had it down, and I had so much trouble with it that I honestly just got frustrated and eventually reached out for support because it wasn't doing what I thought it would do. The support was great. I did get the help I needed, but I really didn't want to have to ask for support for doing something that I felt like was a relatively simple use case, which brings me to the documentation. There's a lot of documentation, and there's a lot of really good documentation. I think what's missing and a critical flaw in the current documentation, as of the beginning of July when I'm recording this, is like a set of how to do X. So like, how do I pick up a gun? How do I transfer control to a new interaction source? That kind of stuff, I think just having really, how can I do X, Y, or Z would make it a lot less frustrating to use when you're setting up these interactions. So I'm a little bit mixed on Interactor. It has so much power and control, so many different things you can do. The finger IK is awesome. You can control how fast the arm goes out, how fast it comes back in. You can make it follow different paths using curves. It's really a phenomenal amount of power that you can get and the fine-grained control over how you can interact with all kinds of different stuff. It didn't have any of those same weird accessor issues that Kineractive had. Accessing the stuff in code was really straightforward, really simple once I knew the right things to do. But I did find that Kineractive was easier to get up and running and do just interactions, which is the whole point of the system. So I guess what I have to say is if you're looking for the most powerful, feature-complete interaction system available, Interactor is definitely that. If you're just trying to do simple, like put hands on gun IK, this is way overkill. You don't need it. Don't buy it for that because there's cheaper options. If you want super fluid, dynamic, picking up transfer control, doing things like spells or different skills, Interactive provides you all the tools you need to get that with really good looking results. You just might be spending some time playing with it and possibly even asking for support first. Finally, we're to SimpleIK. I also reached out to these guys. They did not give it to me for free, so I purchased it. I used the 10% off code using code June10, which now it's July, it's over. But I always have links to the latest sales in the description of my videos. You can always check those out and see what kind of savings you can get. So SimpleIK works for fully procedural IK, like the first few we talked about. It works for animated models. It works with humanoids. It works with generic. SimpleIK is, as advertised, the SimpleIK solver for literally everything. It has solvers for CCD, it has fabric solvers, 2-bone, aim, leg, LlamIK, all of which are convenient to attach, get running, and for the most part are pretty straightforward. What I felt was really lackluster on SimpleIK was the finger placement. The process of doing that is just much less convenient than it is with Interactor. With Interactor, it was really easy to get the fingers exactly where I wanted them. On SimpleIK, it was less nice to do. SimpleIK achieves the finger IK with a somewhat unsurprising approach, just using the 3-joint chain like what you'd use for arms or legs. It just has 5 of them hooked together. SimpleIK has a bunch of video tutorials, it has written documentation, and while it does have a lot of documentation, I feel like the documentation's kind of lackluster. Luckily, most of the stuff is pretty straightforward. You don't need a lot of detail there because it's just you put it on and hook up some stuff and it works. We can even combine multiple IK solutions like AimIK, LlamIK, LookAtIK, all of these, and it's very intuitive, very straightforward to do all of these things. I feel like there's not a lot to say. SimpleIK is good. If you want a no code whatsoever, just drag and drop, start working IK solution, this is what you need. I'm a little bit torn on recommending it at $90 because it's not like it's not a complete system. It totally is. If you need an out-of-the-box solution for every single kind of IK ever, this is really the only option, and it's good. Why I'm having trouble saying, yeah, go ahead and buy it at $90 is for most needs, I feel like you can get the exact same thing using free solutions and a little bit of work. Not like a lot of work, like a little bit of work. So I guess my recommendation is for you to try out free options first. And if your use case doesn't work with those free options, then go ahead and get SimpleIK. You won't be disappointed. It's like the easy button of IK. So if you don't want to spend time re-implementing anything about IK and you just want it to work, that's your solution. You might be asking, Chris, we only talked about using OnAnimator IK for positioning hands and elbows. How can we make the entire animator aim at that particular object? And you're right, we talked primarily about placing hands on a gun and then positioning the elbows so they don't go like this. The animator does provide ways for you to do things like positioning the body and rotating the head, all that kind of stuff. It ends up being more complex though. And that's really where the final asset we're going to look at today comes into play. That's also free, and it's called the Animation Rigging Package, which is published by Unity and it's available in the package manager in the Unity registry. And this package uses the animation jobs, which sometimes makes interacting with it in code a little bit tricky, but it also means the performance is great. The animation rigging package allows you to effectively get SimpleIK using a free Unity package, at least for animated models, humanoid, generic, or otherwise. The animation rigging package gets you same or similar results to SimpleIK in the use cases that it supports. The key distinction is that the animation rigging only works with Unity's animation system, meaning if you wanted generic IK solvers, you need to use something like EasyIK or FastIK if you need those use cases as well, and you're trying to stay completely free. I've recently used the animation rigging package and a SimpleIK controller, the player IK that I've linked already, in the gun series to help you handle aiming perfectly at a target and placing the hands on the gun. If you want to see exactly how to set this up in third-person IK solution, you can check that out, link in the description or on the screen. Sometimes there's some finicky things with the animation rigging package, but it is a fully stable release. We're on 1.1.1, at least, and that's the version that I use today. And it also has a bunch of different IK solvers similar to what we saw in SimpleIK. SimpleIK has more because it also supports more use cases. In summary, my recommendation is for you to start with the free stuff. That's the animation rigging package and running your own SimpleIK script for the hands and the elbows, or just using animation rigging even for the hands and the elbows. See if you can't do what you're trying to do with that. If you can't do it, or it's a ton of effort, then you might consider going to SimpleIK and using the tools that they provide you. If you're doing fully procedural animation, or you just don't want to apply an animator to an object because you're using primitives like what we looked at, SimpleIK is again the go-to for that, living up to its name of the SimpleIK solution that you need. If again you're trying to keep your budget down, you might consider using EasyIK or FastIK and implementing some of that stuff yourself. You can still get really good results with EasyIK and FastIK, so if you want to invest the time and effort and learn something along the way, I'd recommend you check out those. Now if you're looking for a fully featured, robust interaction system to place hands on different objects, interact with different things, do turning of wheels and all that kind of stuff, it's a little bit less clear cut. Kineractive worked pretty well, but required me to make some changes to the core code. The thing to consider there is it's gone free and it used to be paid, so probably it's not getting a lot of new features and probably also doesn't have as good of support anymore. Interactor, on the other hand, is more powerful and was a lot easier to work with in terms of the code. And because it was more powerful, it was more complicated to get set up, and sometimes it was a little bit frustrating for me to get the result I was looking for because the documentation didn't have clear-cut how to do X, Y, or Z. It involved a lot of switching back and forth between demo scenes to figure out why does that work that way, why is mine slightly different and not working. It is still in beta, so I'm really hopeful that that's going to get improved with the full 1.0 release. Now the wrinkle in all this is SimpleIK also has an interaction system that works pretty similarly to what we saw with Interactor, which leaves me at, if you're going to get SimpleIK anyway, might as well start with it for the interaction system and see if it meets your needs there before considering any other solution. I hope this video helps you out understanding the vast IK asset landscape, understand what you can do with some, what you can't do with some, what you might look out for if you're considering one that I didn't review, and you can pick the right one for your game. If you want to support this channel, what you can do to really help me out is click one of those affiliate links in the description. That gives me a small portion of the purchase price at no additional cost to you, and really helps the channel out. There's links to the Asset Store and Humble Bundle, both of which really help me out a lot. You can also go to patreon.com/LlamAcademy or click super thanks or join right here on YouTube, get your name up here on the screen, and get a shout out at the awesome tier like Autumn K, Matt Parkin, Ivan, Rulin, Iffy Obelisk, Dwarf, and Solar Int. And a super thanks from Tom. At the tremendous tier, there's Bruno Bozic. And at the phenomenal tier, there's Andrew Bowen. Thank you all for your support. I am so incredibly grateful.